Welcome to Lead with Hope with Brandy Kelly, the podcast where we explore the power of hope, leadership, and resilience in today's world. Each week, we'll bring you stories, insights, and actionable advice from leaders, innovators, and change makers. So let's dive in and discover how you can lead with hope.
Hello, everyone. Today on the Lead with Hope podcast, I'm excited because Michael Toth has joined me. He is the founder and the CEO of Instructional Empowerment. He's an author and a thought leader, and he has over 25 years of experience in education. Michael has co-authored influential books with thought leaders like Robert Marzano and published peer-reviewed research advancing instructional practice. He's a sought-after keynote speaker and a mentor to superintendents. He's known for helping districts transform instruction and close achievement gaps. Thank you for joining me today, Michael.
Oh, my pleasure.
So, Michael, one of my favorite questions that I like to ask guests is just to share your story. I find each person's story so interesting and oftentimes inspirational. So why don't we start there?
Well, my story is a little different. Most of the researchers, I've been really blessed to be able to work with some of the top researchers in the country. Many of them, had good middle-class families or upper middle class, and they had good experiences in school. And mine's very different. So I grew up in poverty. And one of the things I like to speak about is that there's two schools in every school. Mm-hmm. There's the one where it works for students, and then there's the marginalized students that have a very different experience. So my experience, in part from personal trauma, in part from just not having school readiness. So I was denied kindergarten and preschool. I have no recollection of holding a book. I went into first grade not knowing letters, numbers, or a single nursery tale. Nothing. So there's nothing to hang on to. And I talk about, when there's so many students that were like me, we have a very different experience. We're not the ones raising our hand, ooh, call on me. Mm-hmm. You hold back. And when you hold back and you aren't called on, you aren't worked on with, that gap starts to grow and you don't develop an advocacy. And it wasn't just me. It was many students like me. I'm an outlier. I'm successful. But wow, not everybody was. Some of my friends I grew up with are dead or somewhere and spent time in prison. And that is really how I got into the research side of it. So I was a grant director, research and development grant director at a university, and spun my team out on how to improve instruction and the student experience. And it took a long time. We worked like everybody else. How do we develop a better teacher? Mm-hmm. And I realized, I think we were doing it wrong. We should have been focused on, and now we are focused on, how do we develop master learners instead of master teachers? Because what we found to be a master learner, it's a different learning environment, and where a teacher is more of a coach than a director of the learning all the time.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. It really, truly is fascinating to hear where you came from with a background in poverty, and you talk a little bit about trauma. Where do you think it fits in the idea of belief, the Pygmalion effect, if you will? How does that fit into what you do in a learner-centered environment?
So because I identify with the students that lack school readiness, and don't always believe in themselves.
Yeah.
And may just, doesn't mean they're not loved at home, but they may not have the support that middle class and upper middle class families have.
Mm-hmm.
So they're dependent on that school system, and we need a better experience for them. That we can see it in the test scores. We can see that when we disaggregate by low socioeconomic status, we constantly see this pattern. But what we find in every single instance, it's never the students. It's never the community. It's just simply their starting place. And when they're put into a different environment and we give different teaching methods to teachers, the first thing teachers say is, I didn't know my kids could do that.
Mm.
And that was a very truthful statement because they weren't equipped with the pedagogy. They were equipped with what all of us were equipped with, which was a pedagogy of yesteryear, how to lecture, how to do independent practice, how to do traditional instruction. But our students are very different now. We have much more diverse classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And we believe that teachers are heroes. Every time I visit classrooms and schools, I find teachers working too hard,
Mm-hmm.
and I find too much ritualistic compliance and passive learning from students.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're trying to flip, and it requires different research.
Yeah. Oh, 100% agree with you about the movement from compliance to, these learner-centered environments where students are actively engaged and they're actively participating and facilitating their own learning. So Lead with Hope for me is a system of self-efficacy. H stands for habits. O stands for optimistic outlook. P stands for purpose, passion, and perseverance. And E stands with excellence. So based on your lived experiences, Michael, what resonates most with you and why?
It'd probably be the passion because I've seen lives change. I've seen both students and teachers' lives change. We found lots of teachers that are fatigued and burned out.
Yeah.
Principals that don't want to bring one more program to their teachers, but aren't sure what else to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you can give hope,
Yeah.
because what we're trying to do is go back and reignite the reason educators became educators.
Mm-hmm.
So I do an interactive word wall when I'm doing keynotes with thousands and thousands of educators. And I say, why did you come to this field? What was your calling?
Mm-hmm.
Never once does somebody say get rich quick. Never once. So
No.
it's always to make a difference. They
Mm-hmm.
came in for noble reasons, but sometimes we feel our passion gets damped down when we don't feel like every year we try so hard and we just don't feel like we're moving the needle.
Right.
And where we come back to is our pedagogy of yesteryear was never designed to move that needle.
Yeah.
It really puts teachers doing all the work and not fully having the skill set to transition to letting the students lead their own learning. And students don't walk in with that efficacy or agency to do that, particularly if they come from disadvantaged backgrounds.
Yeah.
It requires a setup and it requires a process, and that's what I write about.
Absolutely. And I wholeheartedly agree with that, so often our teachers, our principals, our superintendents, they just feel stuck or burnout or because what they're doing isn't moving the needle. You're exactly right. And we cannot keep doing what we've always done and expect a different result. And like you said earlier, our classrooms look different now. And we have to adapt to that and we have to change to meet the needs of our learners.
One of the things I'm just working on another keynote speech that I'm giving at our national conference in June in Orlando. And what I keep wrestling with is we have a brand in public education. Mm-hmm. And it may be unfair, but we have one and it's been earned. And I believe our brand comes from the student experience in Tier 1 instruction. And I find so many schools now going one-to-one with computers, and they're pretty happy with it. They're like, look at this 21st century learning. I'm like, it's not 21st century learning.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing computer-based instruction. So what's the difference between teacher-centered, teacher-directed instruction and a computer doing the same thing to kids?
Yeah.
In fact, what we lost is human connection. I'd much rather have a teacher, but what we're not going to get from a computer is interpersonal skills, self-efficacy, teamwork, problem-solving, creating. I'm not against the technology. It's how we use it. Do we use it as for research and inquiry and creating, or are we just letting it spoon feed kids content? And that's not going to create the efficacy and agency that we're looking for.
No, and that's what we need for the future. That's what we need for the classrooms of today and the future. And, when you think about our kids, they are on technology more now than they probably ever have been before. And I think what we're missing is that human piece. We need more of that personal connection, more of the relationship, more of the soft skills in our classrooms. And I love the idea of having the student be the focus of what drives the instruction. Because if we can get back to what kids need and letting them drive the instructional piece, I think we're going to be much better equipped for our future and for their future.
So that process, which has been talked about for 30 years, we need to release. We need to be student-centered. It's not that easy to put in place because we have to change habits.
Yeah.
It's part of your acronym.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a challenge because when you learn a new pedagogy, you're not yet good with it. You're not. And it's very uncomfortable for an adult to learn something, be a novice, and go in front of kids and have to teach.
Yeah.
It doesn't take long, but we have to persist through the implementation dip. There's really good research from Satir on that model. But once we form the new habit, in other words, become proficient with it and realize that we set up structures and release, students are far more capable than they are when we keep them in compliance and dependence. And what I mean by dependence is they'll do whatever the teacher says to do, but they're going to sit and wait to be told.
Mm-hmm.
When we have a flipped classroom where the students are learning how to lead their own learning, and that means the teacher does the setup, they still lecture, but much briefer, and have to release to a rigorous task. Students need roles, they need responsibilities, they need norms, but they flourish every single time when we make that release and set them up for it. They're capable so much more rigor than we realize.
They definitely rise to the level of expectation we set for them. And I think it goes back to the systems that we put in place. We have those systems in place and we teach them how to function with the structures that you talk about. They're going to rise to our expectation and probably surpass it.
So what we did this to increase achievement and eliminate achievement gaps. What we found in the research is we were doing that, but we had other unintended effects. Engagement went up, attendance went up, negative discipline went down, positive behavioral referrals for the same students went up dramatically, and teacher happiness, satisfaction went up, and teacher frustration went down in every one of our longitudinal studies. And it's been profound. And we believe that we need to bring the joy back to teaching and the joy back to learning. And part of the high stakes accountability kind of erase some of that. And we're in the tyranny of covering content instead of learning rich and rigorous content.
Yeah, I love that. I think that when you look at our classrooms today and the behaviors, teachers are very frustrated because they don't feel like they have what they need to help their kids be successful and also for them to feel successful. They don't feel like they're able to meet the objective. So implementing a system like this can provide so much hope. Many of the kids in those classrooms are diagnosed with anxiety or depression or trauma. I'm just curious from your experience, whether it be a student or a teacher or even maybe even yourself, what kinds of adversity or trauma have you seen, and how does your approach address those difficult students?
So we have a number of research articles that we've released on this. We're finding students with disabilities and IEPs thriving. English learners thriving, but our approach is different. We firmly found in the research that mixed ability teaming outpaces ability grouping dramatically. And it's partly as the level of conversation, but it's the background knowledge, the vocabulary sharing. And so when we put students in ability groups, though it has noble intent, and we're like, well, we can give them what we need. The reality is they don't have peer groups pushing them to higher levels. And what we'll find is a leveling up effect. So we're very intentional with this. Some of the stories I can tell you, I was just talking with the superintendent and CAO where they were doing this with profoundly disabled and bringing teaming in and showing how it had to be adapted, but those students were able to do things they have never seen before. And the joy in both the student and the teacher was amazing. But in our regular education classrooms, that's where we see just this tremendous blossoming. So there was a student, and I saw it in classroom with my own eyes, and it was kind of watching the team and just starting to participate, but you could tell there was trauma there. So I asked the teacher what the story was. He was homeschooled, but what really happened is he was locked in a room for his whole life. So I think it was fourth grade or so, he entered school, but for the first time saw other children and had to learn how to speak, the muscle movement. And they were showing me, telling me the dramatic change that safety in a team, excuse me, in that interaction has made a world of difference, just how much thriving that we have. The safe place to create, excuse me, for students is actually in a team where there's a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And because in many cases, it was the adult that was involved in trauma. So what we're finding in our student interviews is the students are saying they're much more comfortable opening up in their safe places with their peers.
That belonging is so incredibly needed right now.
And I believe that's partly with excessive screen time. We have an epidemic of anxiety and loneliness in today's students that we've never had. And weirdly, we're the most wired generation ever, but we're not developing what you were talking about, those soft skills. And the big one, honestly, is empathy.
Yeah.
When you're anonymous, you can, and you don't see the person, you can say or text all kinds of awful things. But when we have that relationship, we find this natural outgrowth of empathy, students caring for other students. There's a story, there's a high school that did this in Maryland, and the principal was so excited at prom, after prom, called one of our coaches she was working with and said, for the first time ever, students with IEPs and disabilities came to the prom. They usually did not come. Sat with, ate with, and danced with regular education students. And she attributed to the mixed ability teaming, they became friends. Yeah. There was an interview I was watching of one of our students and teams, has IEP, dyslexic, lots of anxiety. And she said what has been the game changer for her is confidence.
Mm-hmm.
and developing friend groups. And when you're in persistent teams, the research talks about boundedness. That's when they begin anticipating. And the neuroscience, and I'm a neuroscience fan,
Yeah.
students in a well-bounded team, they anticipate, they have empathy. But when they brain image, scan the brains, they actually see the brain waves sync up. It's super cool
That is cool.
because they care about one another, and that becomes their team. And
Mm-hmm.
what happens is they will help every student get to the rigor of the learning target. Now, we give them protocols, we give them roles, we coach that, but they do it. And that's how we level up all the time students that didn't have sufficient school level readiness. So in our average classroom, we'll have 5 to 6 grade levels of ability. Teachers
Okay.
realize this. Like, it's teaching is one of the hardest jobs on earth to do well.
Yes.
It's so complex. There's
Yeah.
so many decisions they have to make and the planning that has to be
Mm-hmm.
done. But when you see where the students are leading the learning and the teacher turns to a coach during that time, that's when we start seeing teachers really glow and really come into their own because they let the stage go to the students.
Yeah. And you talked about the students developing that self-efficacy. You're seeing the teachers develop self-efficacy as well. And are they receptive to this, even though they have a number of different levels they're teaching in the classroom?
100%. So once they get through the implementation,
Mm-hmm.
that's not long, but you have to go through it because we have to learn a new skill.
Yeah.
And the students have to learn a new skill. But once they go through it, we're not talking months, we're talking weeks.
Okay.
The learning acceleration is dramatic.
So,
And that's when teachers tell us they feel the self-efficacy. But the big thing came back to them was passion.
mm-hmm.
So many teachers reported to us that they were going to retire. They're going to leave the profession, but not now because the joy that they had experienced either in the past or maybe never could really get there. Now they can with today's students, but our students are different.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't going to sit there and be engaged with listening to an adult talk at them for a long period of time. And that's part of the effects that we know from excessive screen time.
Mm-hmm.
Is they just can't do it anymore. The brain's actually literally been rewired.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to change our approach.
We absolutely do. And I think this approach provides hope for our teachers to get back to what they love, to reconnect with their purpose, to help kids and to help kids reach their full potential. So is there a specific passion project or something you're working on right now that you'd like to share about?
We're working on demonstration schools for deeper learning and demonstration classrooms, and where teachers can showcase the skills, but they showcase it in their students.
Okay.
And that's the beauty of the process, because what we're finding is it's challenging to put into place. It's work, but it just pays these dividends. And what we're seeing is the learning gains go up and up every year because the students become more skillful as the teacher becomes more skillful. It's easier to replicate. So it's about, we like to work with what we call a coalition of the willing, volunteer teachers that have this purpose, have the hope, and want to be able to get it going. And once they do, this grows through teacher advocacy all day long. It's teachers bringing other teachers and saying, you've got to see this transformation.
And you're building not just self-efficacy among the teachers, but collective teacher efficacy. And I love what you said about having the coalition of the willing, those volunteer teacher leaders who are willing to step up and to try something new, to be able to have that hope and to build something better for the future. If somebody wants to see this in action, how do they get in touch with you? Where do they go to learn more about these practices we've talked about today?
Our website, instructionalempowerment.com, we put all our peer-reviewed research articles. So we have an applied research center. We use federal research guidelines, and our research gets published in peer-reviewed journals is there. But the most sought after is to watch the videos, and you'll see videos of students teaming and teachers talking about their journey and the impact. It's very, very powerful. And we always welcome people to dip their toe in. They can always come to our conference, buildingexpertise.com, and just see 1,000 educators that are putting this in place and watch their passion. And their purpose being fulfilled just energizes all of us.
Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that you're putting all of this hope into the world, and you are providing a better way forward for our kids and for our teachers, because as we all know, people are looking to get out of education, and we need good teachers, good administrators, and individuals who are willing to try new things to achieve better outcomes. So thank you for sharing with us today, and thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at teachbetter.com/podcasts, and we'll see you at the next episode.